Welcome to
Oh, Amy, we can't hear you.
Can y'all hear me?
We heard good morning and that was it. So you want to try it again?
Good morning and welcome to the Continuing Advisory Committee for Special Education. I am your chair, Amy Litzinger, and today is February 23rd of 2024. I'm excited about today's meeting and I'm happy all of you have joined us. Just a reminder that our duties are to advise TEA of unmet needs within the state in the education of children with disabilities. And to comment publicly on any rules, regulations proposed regarding the education of children with disabilities, advise TEA in developing evaluations and reporting on data, advise TEA in developing corrective action plans to address findings identified in the federal monitoring reports under Part B of the Act, advise TEA in developing and implementing policies relating to the coordination of services for children with disabilities, advise TEA in setting standards related to significant disproportionality determination. The CAC is required to submit a report to the legislature biannually with recommended changes to state law and agency rules relating to special education. So today we're going to have some TEA updates, including legislative updates and seizure protocol. Then we're going to have a presentation from the Texas Societies of Interpreters for the Deaf, their policy and advocacy presentation. Then we'll do public comments, then officer elections. Then we're going to talk about bylaws, and we're going to set some work group norms. And then we'll work on our legislative updates and review some minutes and set our agenda topics for next time. So now we can get started if people are ready for our TEA updates.
Yes,
Stephanie?
we are. Yeah, we are. Thank you very much. Our first person from TEA is Kristen McGuire. She is the Senior Director of Special Education Policy, Programs, and Reporting, and she's going to give us some legislative updates, any updatings about SPED funding, and address the digital technology question that was posed last meeting. So Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. And Stephanie, if there's no objection, we could let Barney go ahead because I know Kim and I are on the list for TEA updates, and I'm Kim's boss and we're on the same team. So she and I can wait. And I know Barney's got a full day. So if there's no objection, Barney can go ahead and go first.
Very good. Yes, thank you. That's a great idea. And Barney Fudge is the Health and Physical Education Coordinator, and he's here to address the questions that the committee had about seizure protocol. So Barney, we'll turn it over to you. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Happy Friday. My name is Barney Fudge. I'm the statewide coordinator for health education and physical education at the Texas Education Agency, and also have the responsibility for school health. So pretty much anything with school health that kind of falls within that arena or area is one of the responsibilities that I have as well. And I do have a PowerPoint presentation. So is there any way to
Yeah,
make me
you
a
can-
presenter so I could share screen or something, or
You should be able to share your screen.
where? I don't see that as an option for me down at the bottom.
Should be right down at the bottom of your screen.
There we go. Got it.
Got it? Okay, great.
I'm an Aggie, so I'm glad y'all are going to be talking about technology because that'll help out other Aggies. Well,
I think if you just go up to slideshow,
yeah, that's where I'm trying to get to.
yeah, up at the top, go over to the right a little bit. Keep going to the right where it says slideshow. Now you go into the left. Go to the left a little more. Top, at the top.
Yeah, I can't see it. Y'all can, I can't. So I'm
Oh,
gonna have to stop sharing for a minute. Bear with me.
sure.
It was hidden from me.
Okay.
Okay, now let's. Well, shoot. It's not, I can't, because every time I go back, it covers it up. So we may just have to do it old school style.
And that's okay. The way you had it before, it just wasn't in presentation mode, but we can still see your slides, so that would be fine.
Fiddlesticks. Okay, we're just gonna run with it this way because I can't get up there to start a slideshow.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, here we go. Maybe this. There,
There
can
you
everybody see it now?
Perfect.
All right. Apologize for technical difficulties. Okay. So we're gonna kind of do a historical check to kind of give us a background or to kind of paint a picture, because kind of connecting dots with legislation to get to where we are now with legislation about seizure disorder, we kind of have to go backwards a little bit, and it's kind of like going from point A to point B through a mountainous winding road sometimes to understand legislation. So we're going to look at House Bill 684 from the 86th legislative session. Then we're going to talk about this past session with House Senate Bill 1506, which predominantly made some of the changes that I'm here to discuss today. And then I'll answer any questions that anybody has about the information that I've provided. So during the 86th legislative session, House Bill 684 was signed into law, and it added new Texas Education Code 38.032. And so what this did was it brought about a form, and parents, it's permissive. So parents may seek care for their student seizures while the student's at school, and participate in any activities by submitting this form and treatment plan that's developed by the student's parent or guardian and the physician responsible for the student's care to the district. And the plan had to be submitted and reviewed by the district before beginning at the of the school year upon enrollment of the student. If the student enrolls in the district after the beginning of the school year, and then as soon as practicable, if the student is diagnosed with a seizure disorder. And then the treatment plan, it gave some specific criteria. So the treatment plan had to identify the healthcare services the student was to receive, evaluate the student's ability to manage the seizure, as well as the student's understanding of the seizures. And then the form had to be signed by the parent's guardian and the physician responsible for treating the student for seizure disorder. And then in addition to that, some of the biggest part of this was that the bill established training. So it also added Texas Education Code 38.033. And so it required school nurses to complete a TEA approved online course of instruction in managing students with seizure disorders, and then also required school district employees other than a school nurse whose duties include regular contact with students to also complete the TEA online approved course of instruction. And there were some specifics with that. So the course of instruction had to be provided by a private nonprofit national foundation that supports seizure disorders. And the online course of instruction had to be approved by TEA, and it also had to be free of charge from the entity that's providing the service. So it kind of gave very detailed, specific information and kind of a direction on where the agency was supposed to look, or how we were supposed to do a call for programs and select that information. And so the two programs that were submitted that met all the criteria were actually from the Epilepsy Foundation. And those programs are posted on the Healthy and Safe School Environment of the Coordinated School Health webpage. And that QR code will take you straight there, or you can also click on that link and get there as well. And those programs have been there, and the one for school nurses, I believe, has been updated since the legislation has been in effect, and that updated program is reflected there, as well as the one for school personnel. And then in addition to that, also subsection D of that same section of statute requires TEA to adopt any rules that are necessary to administer the new requirements.
Hey, Barney,
All right.
I'm sorry.
Ye-
May I
yes.
interrupt you 1 second? We can't see if you're switching your slides. We can't
Oh,
see them.
no, they're not.
But,
You can't see if
yeah.
they're switching. So let me get out of
Right.
presentation mode then.
And I did drop some handouts. You sent me handouts for this presentation. I dropped those in the chat if folks want to open that up. There's
Okay.
some, there you go.
Can y'all see it now, just in the mode it's in?
Yeah, you're on slide 5,
Yes.
House Bill
Okay.
684. Yeah,
Does anybody need me to go back so you can see the information?
I think you're okay because I dropped the handout in the chat, so I think they'll be able to see it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. Thank you for letting me know. All right, so now, since we kind of got our historical background, now we'll go into the 88th. And with the 88th legislative session, Senate Bill 1506 was signed into law, and it amended TEC 38.032 by requiring TEA to adopt and post on the website no later than December 1st of 2023 a form to be used in submitting seizure management treatment plans. So in the 86th, that is where the form was to be created. But now we're trying to standardize things more now. So now TA is required to adopt and post a form on the agency website. And this change in law only applies to seizure management treatment plans that are submitted on or after January 1st, 2024. So anything that was submitted in the fall can be on any form that was provided, but anything on beginning January 1st, 2024 or after must be on the form that is posted on the TEA webpage, which was provided prior in that link where the trainings are. So in regard to protocol, the bill itself doesn't establish any protocols, but it does require districts to provide information about protocols. So the bill adds new subsection B11 requiring the form to request a description of seizure emergency protocol. So the district has to, they're saying we got to have, the form has to collect information on the district's protocol that is used, emergency protocol that district personnel would use. And then the seizure management form that's also posted on the website has to request treatment protocol information for any medications or other procedures that are to be administered by district personnel as well. So with that, again, the form is the requirement of the form is there, but as far as the parent or guardian of the student with a seizure disorder seeking care and submitting that form, again, it's permissive. They may seek care by submitting that form. So if they want to seek care for their student, then the form is required to be submitted, and it has to be on that form that's posted on the agency website. And it's got to be, developed in partnership with the medical provider and the student's parent or guardian, and has to be signed by both. So in essence, the agency really doesn't know what the district protocols would consist of or how they're being implemented, because education law or rule doesn't require the districts to submit these forms to the agency for review, nor does law or rule require the agency or give the agency any compliance monitoring authority. So it's a little gray, because the law doesn't specifically say a district must have a protocol in place, but the form in itself asks for a district to provide information about their protocol. So it doesn't necessarily state a district must have a protocol, but the form requires them to provide information about a protocol. But then we don't know what any district protocols look like, because the forms aren't required to be submitted to us, and the law doesn't give the agency compliance monitoring authority over that. Any questions?
This is
Amy Lutzinger.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question about, I know that we don't know schools' individual protocols, but is there a protocol for how a district has to notify parents and or the ARD committee about how to implement a individual seizure protocol for a student?
That's a really good question, and that would be done through all of the federal law requirements, through Section 504 or IDEA, or through a student's individualized health plan. So if a student is diagnosed, my understanding is if a student is diagnosed or has seizure disorder, then they may qualify for services under Section 504 or IDEA. But the ARD committee would have to be the one that would make those decisions or determinations if they qualify for services. And if they did, then that information would be included in that student's individualized education plan that the ARD committee would review. And then that student's individualized health plan would also be a part of that information as well, is my understanding. But I am not a special education expert by any means.
Follow-up question, because I'm a picky self-advocate myself. As part of the transition planning team, at what point does a student gain more control about how to implement their own seizure plan? Or
That's another great question. And I'm not exactly sure. I believe that age would be part of that equation. I think I'm not exactly sure. I know the state of Texas, at the age of 18, you can you no longer have to have parents make decisions for you. You can make your own decisions at that point. But again, I don't, with special education federal guidelines, I don't know how that impacts or where that comes in. Is there anybody on the call or in the audience that might be able to shed more information than I can?
Can you repeat the question, Amy?
as part of self-determination and or your transition ARD or ARDs, at what point can the student have input on their seizure protocol?
At what point can the seizure protocol be part of the IEP?
No,
Oh.
can themselves have an input and not just the parent?
Oh. Um, I don't know. I don't think there's a
There's
specific guideline on that. Yeah, we'd have to think about that.
I guess my advocacy brain is going,
Uh-huh.
make sure that students are involved, but I don't think we can do that with policy. So that may be more of a advocacy question than a policy question.
Yeah, or we could at least put it in the, kind of best practices of self-determination. Yeah.
Amy, this is Aaron. Reading slide 5 from the presentation that describes the seizure management and treatment plan. My guess is it probably is up to the parent, guardian, the healthcare provider, and the student. Because it just says identify the healthcare services, which presumably would be a joint decision. Evaluate the student's ability, which presumably would come from the parent, guardian, and healthcare provider. And then the student is not asked to sign that, just parent, guardian, and the physician. So there's probably nothing. I would kind of answer your question is by inferring from this. I would say that there's nothing in process that requires input from the student in question. Though I don't see anything that would sort of preclude that either, insofar that student, that child has input over their medical, their medical choices and healthcare generally.
Any other questions? And I did want to pull pull up the form real quick. Can y'all see the webpage that just pulled up?
No, we can't.
Oh, man. Okay, so let's stop share. Now, can y'all see it?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so this is the web page that the QR code goes to and the link goes to as well. And so you have the seizure management and treatment form, and the information on slide 5, that is from the information that was added during the 86th legislative session. But the information that was added during the 88th legislative session has like 19 different criteria that is to be collected, and I wanted to show that, and I'm assuming if I'm a betting man, once I click on this, you're probably not going to be able to see that either. Do y'all see the PDF either?
We do, actually, we do.
Oh,
We do.
awesome. Right. So this is what the form looks like. So we collect all the personal information up at the top, and then everything that is on the form is what is required statutorily to be collected. The seizure information, the type, the length, the frequency, and what happens during the seizure, any triggers or warning signs, any VNS, nerve stimulation, or any other devices that are that have been implanted, and then basic first aid, when to call 911, when you should call the student's doctor first, and then the emergency protocol questions for district personnel to follow, and then when rescue therapy is needed, what is what kind of student's response and care after the seizure is needed, what type of help is needed, when can they resume their usual activity, can they go back to the classroom, again, are they able to manage and understand their seizures, and then any special instructions for first responders or emergency department, and then their daily medication, that information, dosage amount, name, time to be given, side effects, any special instructions to go along with that medication, and then any other important information, and then the healthcare contacts and signature of the parent or guardian and the epilepsy provider. And we are in the process of having this form translated into Spanish, and we do hope to have that posted here in the next several weeks at the same location. So that's what the form looks like, and this is the second version of the form. The first version that we posted, we got a lot of feedback, and then we took that feedback, and then in collaboration with the Epilepsy Foundation, revised the form and got it down to its original state that it's in right now. Well, I thank you all for your time and your patience with me and learning how to rework technology again. I usually don't do things through webinar. I do everything through Teams, so it's a little bit of a transition. But I appreciate your time, and thank you all for having me. And on that last slide, if you could, for future feedback and improvement in presentations for me, if y'all could fill out the survey that is at the end of that QR code, and be sure to select my name, Barney Fudge. I sure would appreciate it. And I wish you all a very happy Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much, Barney. We appreciate your time and all the information.
And if y'all have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email also.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so moving on our agenda, We have some other folks from TEA, and we have Kristen and Kim. Kristen, would you like to go first?
I can. I don't have a ton of updates, but just wanted to let you know of some rulemaking that's coming down the pike, as well as just some information leading up to next session. So first thing, in terms of kind of in the lens of legislative update and kind of the impact on rulemaking. In the Texas Register today, we do have proposed rule amendments to the Supplemental Special Education Services Program, or SSES for short. That is the grant program for families to obtain a $1,500 grant for the purchase of goods or services. And so the agency is proposing some amendments, primarily, or at least initially, based on the passage of House Bill 1926 in the last legislative session that kind of removed that expiration date for the program, and just kind of made some other tweaks to essentially just saying, this program will continue. So one of the things that we have experienced in the agency, and just in lawmakers too, is to kind of think about this from more of the purpose lens of what is this program. And so we are actually, through our authority to kind of manage the program, we are going to change, or at least we're going to direct the name change of how we administer the program. Again, I'm saying this from the lens of this is all proposed at this point, but we propose to change the name to Parent-Directed Special Education Services, and so we've made some proposed rulemaking amendments to document that. The other kind of changes in that particular rule is to sort of clarify the submission deadlines of applications. So we have implemented, already implemented an application window for parents, and that will, for many reasons. One of the primary reasons is to really allow us to, with reliability, prioritize what we're, the population of students we are required by law to prioritize. And those are the ones that qualify for a comp ed allotment. So we've instituted an application window already. This kind of puts that as well here. And then just kind of, talks about, just put some more logistics and mechanics around, now that this is going to be a permanent program, as long as money is appropriated. There were some specifics we needed to kind of put in place to make sure we're administering the program accurately and efficiently. So those are some proposed amendments out today. Next month, there will be some proposed amendments put out. We have several coming up in the next coming months, and so we'll get some feedback, some initial feedback from you guys, as well as kind of coming back to the table with some other questions. But we do anticipate in the next month to have some proposed revisions to our full individual and initial evaluation rule, which is 89.1011. And that is to incorporate primarily our the form that was created for compliance with House Bill 3928. And that's the kind of informally referred to as kind of the dyslexia bill. The form that was required to be created out of that bill, which was essentially notifying parents of their rights under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, as opposed to rights under 504. How the agency approached that is that we developed a kind of overview of special education for parents. And so in the proposed amendments for our FIIE rule, we are planning to propose the requirement for that form to be given to parents regardless of the suspected disability. So it wouldn't just be for dyslexia. We had already talked, with our FAQ on 3928 that told districts, we would expect them to go ahead and initiate that practice of giving that form to every parent at the kind of at that referral stage, so that parents could have access to that form. But this is kind of proposing that. It's kind of streamlining and clarifying the evaluation to the ARD eligibility meeting process. So that's so look for proposed amendments there. In our eligibility criteria rule, we will propose an amendment to our deaf and hard of hearing eligibility, and that is based actually on a petition for rulemaking change that was submitted to us. That was a request to remove a specific type of evaluation from the process, because that the ontological evaluation, I think it is, because that was not seen as critical to in the field to eligibility for special education under our criteria. And so after we kind of solicited feedback from some deaf and hard of hearing administrators, they agreed. And so one of the proposed amendments would be to delete that criteria based on the petition. And there will also be some proposed amendments to our specific learning disability criteria because of, again, House Bill 3928. And then also proposed is, I think I've mentioned this to you before, is that, currently Texas does not use the developmental delay eligibility category that federal law allows us to. And so we will be proposing a kind of phase out of our current non-categorical early childhood eligibility designation over to a developmental delay eligibility definition. So you'll see that in that particular rule. And then I would say one of the other proposed revisions you'll see here shortly is that we are planning to propose that our transition requirements. So in Texas, we have a specific state statute that talks about it mirrors, but doesn't necessarily align fully with the federal requirements on transition. And it also requires transition under that state statute to start at 14. And under the federal statute, their requirements start at 16. And so one of the proposed amendments that you'll see is to basically kind of align everything to age 14. I think most districts do that anyway, because again, the requirements kind of mirror each other, but they're worded differently and there is a little bit of difference. And so one of the proposed amendments would be to align everything to 14, including the federal. And then in future months, we've had quite a few issues and questions that have come up in the field regarding kind of how we define our instructional amendments. And Susan, no, I don't. I forgot to tell y'all, I made the rookiest of rookie mistakes last night, and I started working on a PowerPoint and I forgot to save it as I went, and then the agency forced a restart of my computer this morning. And yeah, I'm not on all cylinders this morning. So I do not, but I can kind of summarize what I'm referring to and send that over to Stephanie. But I can't believe I did that because I know better. But I didn't get back access to my slides. So we've had lots of questions and some, kind of different issues that have come up in today's world on students and serving students and where we serve students. And so we'll have some proposed changes to our instructional arrangement definitions. And if you remember, that's how the instructional arrangement codes are what ultimately fund the special education allotment. And so we'll have some changes, proposed changes there. And then we've had some questions and some needed clarifications that need to be proposed to our non-public day placements as well as our residential placements. So you'll see some proposed revisions there. So I will share with Stephanie that information just so you can watch for that. I'll put the link to the SSES, or I guess we'll have a new acronym, PDSES rules. I'll put that in the chat for you since that was posted today. And then, of course, I'll continue to keep you updated on future. But we kind of really looked at this as an opportunity in this coming year to take a look at a lot of our current commissioner rules in the administrative code and make sure that we're trying to clarify things that we've seen over the years. If we have issues of non-compliance on school districts, is there any kind of common theme or anything like that we could clarify and rule, and then just generally responding to legislation. And then we had some previous questions on kind of the digital accessibility and assistive technologies that were in your previous legislative report. And I just wanted to report back because there was a question of whether, TEA had taken action on any of that. On the accessibility policy, the answer to that is no, we have not moved on that. We kind of have we sort of have a kind of a need, our own sort of internal needs assessment process on what we need to, get focused on with technical assistance. And so other things have kind of come to the surface on ahead of the digital accessibility, but we will continue to look at that topic. We do, in terms of assistive technology, there was a kind of a federal OSEP sort of guide or kind of things to consider around assistive technology that was just published fairly recently, and I can put the link to that in the chat. We're also in process of trying to create a more of a kind of a resource site or kind of page on assistive technology for school districts to review when they're looking at different types of assistive technology. So that is something definitely in the works right now. And I believe that would ultimately be accessible through our Texas Sped Support website, which I think Kim is going to talk to here in a minute. So we are definitely working on some assistive technology resource work. And so we'll continue to keep you posted on that. Right now, we're kind of working with a network to, kind of draw that map out and kind of see what that might look like. So I'll stop talking and stop yapping, but I'm happy to take any questions, or if you want me to bring back anything next time, feel free to reach out to Stephanie as well. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks for the updates, Kristen. So as we think about, reviewing and keeping or updating the recommendations from our previous report under the digital literacy and accessibility category. So it sounds like there's not really isn't any consideration around the explicit policy. That's our recommendation 14. Is that correct?
Correct. And I think that's being for a variety of reasons. Obviously some other issues have come up. I think that's also in the realm of there's so much work on the, digital citizenship and accessibility in other areas too. So I think, it might need to be a consideration to sort of tie into some other areas in our agency as well as in the, legislature, to sort of tie in those to work that's already going on, in terms of kind of minimum standards for digital citizenship and accessibility. So, you know, I can definitely continue to pursue that, but I think, you know, it is definitely still, I think, a relevant conversation around your next report as far as what you want to consider putting in there.
Okay, I think we had a presentation from that digital citizenship report that's out there at the state, and you know, we had pointed out there's really no discussion whatsoever about accessibility in there.
Okay.
The presenter of that said, well, that's because we're not trying to go into every little detail, and of course certainly we have a different point of view, but that's their report, right? So if they're not going to take a lead in explicitly calling out accessibility as part and parcel of that, you know, if you don't have accessibility, you're just throwing up even more barriers.
Right.
So the goal of the recommendation is not to invent any new requirements. It's to be more explicit about the requirements that the local education agencies have on them, whether it's Title II, and of course, the Department of Justice is going through rulemaking right there. So, I mean, it's you know, I don't think we have to wonder if what the expectations would be for school districts on the digital accessibility content. It's more just like, hey, it's a lot easier to point to a specific, you know, policy that says we need to do this, rather than just vaguely say, well, I'm sure somewhere, some law says we have to do it.
Right.
So it seems like a pretty straightforward way to not actually change any requirements, to add any rules or things like that, but just to make it more explicit, because we know there's a digital content is already a huge part of the education process, and
Right.
people are kind of wandering around saying, well, I'm not sure, those sorts of things. I think it would just be easier in terms of implementation if people had that as a clear tool.
Yeah. Well, and if I'm happy if you want to send resources my way. If there's anything we can do, even in the form of like a Q&A or something to where it's kind of pointing to resources, I'm happy to look at that as well. At least in there, right?
Yeah, there's lots of good resources on how to adopt a accessibility policy, whether it's things that are at the state level, or private organizations and so on and so forth. So I can happy to send that over.
Okay.
And then you mentioned a website on digital accessibility. I mean, I think that was one of the things that we're looking at with a particular recommendation 15 about, we know that, classroom teachers are not accessibility experts. They won't be ever be accessibility experts. But they do want to make sure that if they've got a student with a disability in the classroom, that they're not excluding them or leaving them out or putting them at a disadvantage, but they don't know what they don't know. And so what that one is really designed to do is saying, like, look, we know from past work that they're looking for some self-guided training, not overwhelming. They're looking for like simple implementation checklists and things like that, where they can basically be given somebody to help them, and there's not, and these are things that happen over and over again. So if that website you're describing is looking at doing some of that, that may be a great place to do that. And again, if you need support or help or pointers in the right direction on that, I think that's what we're looking for with that particular recommendation. And if we can get a sense of what the timeline is and who's working on it and what is the scope of what they're kind of anticipating including on that site, how they would communicate the information on that site to the not just to the LEAs, but how does that cascade down to the individual classroom staff? That would be great to know.
Yeah. And everything you just said in the last minute is exactly everything we've just been talking about in terms of like, we need a work plan kind of what all this is going to, end up being with the end goal of a teacher being able to access easy, easy professional development or, training on particular technologies and accessibility issues. So yeah, that's definitely the end goal, is to reach kind of an individual teacher to help with that. So I can definitely bring back more info as we solidify that.
Yeah, please keep us updated on that. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Anybody else have anything for me before I turn it over to Kim? All right, well, I'll put a couple of things in chat and I'll let Kim take over. And she saved her slides and or saved her information before, didn't do a rookie mistake like I did last night.
Yeah, but after Barney, I'm just hoping it presents.
Right.
Shows up. Like, I'm scared now. Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Brannon. I'm the Director of Special Ed Technical Assistance, and that was actually a good segue into what I wanted to share with y'all today. I wanted to go over Texas Sped Support. It's our new Special Ed Technical Assistance website that launched in August. And then give a shameless plug for the monthly SPED newsletter as well, show y'all some new features on it. So I'm going to start with Texas Sped Support. Thank you to all who already know about it, or already using it, already sharing it with your colleagues. But for those of you who don't know, previously the last 5 years, we have had grants with ESCs and IHEs to stand up special ed technical assistance networks. And there were about like 9 of them, 10 technically, but they've fallen off to like 9. And all of the resources that they created in the last 5 years were on all those different websites, like separate websites. So if I wanted something on behavior, I would have to go to TSLAP's websites, TextCan's websites, and find different behavior things. So what we did, it's been about 3 years. It took us to stand this website up, is all of the content on those websites is now in one place that's easily searchable. So let me show y'all. Stephanie, can you let me know if y'all can see this?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. All right. So this is the face of the Texas Sped Support site. And let's go visit it here. And I'm going to walk you through. All right, so here's the actual site. One thing you'll notice is you can have an account. You can sign up for an account. And I'm going to show you at the end what an account does for you. It's really beneficial. How you get through, let me show you here. If you go to if you don't already have an account, you would go here and a drop down would show sign up for a new account, and you fill out a couple of fields. It's that simple. It would take a couple of seconds to sign up for an account. The way you navigate this, so here are topical tabs up at the top, and also if you scroll. So of course you can search the site in a traditional way, typing here and typing here, and you can search for keywords of stuff. We were talking about accessibility. You can do that. Let's see what we get. Accessibility. And here we have accessible instructional materials, building a foundation. So you can see all of the topics that are tagged with the keyword accessibility. Another way that you can look for things is by topic. And again, when I say all of these things you can get to from the top, you can also get to by scrolling. Here's your topics. There's your learning library. Here's your resource library right there. So you can scroll as well. The other thing scrolling gets you is our featured and popular section. Featured section we control. I usually put out to all of my team, hey, what's up and coming? What do we want to highlight? And my team says, highlight this, this, this. And so that goes here. So that's driven by us. It changes every month. The popular this week is literally automated, and it just shows what's popular for the last 7 days. So this changes all the time. All right, going back to how you can search topics. Here are the topics we have right now. We can add topics in the future. Like we have had some buzz internally in our office of adding dual identified. Once we get a body of work that is on that topic, we will add the topic to this list. You can also click view all topics. And as you can see here, you can follow them, you can unfollow them. But all of them are listed here, and it also tells you how many resources. Now, some of those are doubled up because you could have like behavior and autism, so it would be 2 topics, but this tells you about how many resources are under each topic. So you can search that way. If you go, another way to search is our resource library. So the resource library is different from the learning library. Resources are our guidebooks, our tools and templates, our videos, things like that. Whereas the learning library is actual professional development. We have online courses, there's synchronous trainings that you can hook up with your region and sign up for. There's conferences in the learning library, but the resource library has our like tools and our guidance documents. And so you can search these tools. Like I can say that I would like assistive technology, and I want to see what kind of tools or templates. There were no results for that one. Let's see if I have any videos on it. So you can search for like, hey, what topic am I interested in? What type of resource do I want? And you can even go, I want it for administrators. There were none there. General educators, here you go. So it's searchable that way. If you go into the learning library, you basically have the same search ability. But again, it's for courses, synchronous trainings, conferences, things like that. One thing I wanted to show y'all was a different type of resource. We also have HTML page. Let's look up here. So we have you have resources that you can actually download, like templates, progress monitoring tools, things like that, guidebooks that you can view. The other type of thing that we have is like an article. So you can, this is like the table of contents. I can flip through and read the information, and I can also go back and I can go forward. So that's one type of resource. Another one, we have all our autism circuit tools here. So just a lot of neat resources. Once you follow something, you can go to your following. If you've signed up for an account, your topics that you follow will be listed here. You can also go to your bookmarks, things that you have bookmarked that are really relevant, you want to refer back to. I'm thinking maybe some of our technical assistance guides, which are under state guidance, like, hey, I need to know that behavior guide because that is my particular role, and I need to know the rules and regulations regarding behavior. So this is where you keep your bookmark, and you can search your bookmark tabs so that you can easily find what you want. The other thing I wanted to tell you is about up and coming things. So just like Kristen alluded to earlier, if y'all have ever shopped on like the Old Navy site, you know that they have the bar that's like Banana Republic, Old Navy, Gap, I think it is, and they're all at the top and you can flip through each of them. That's what Texas Sped Support is currently doing as an enhancement that will probably roll out next year when the AT tool comes, but there will be a bar here where you can click Texas Sped Support. There will be a bar where you click the AT library, whatever it ends up being called, and target the autism body of work that has the assessments and evidence-based practices. That will be there. And we can add little tabs so that literally your experience is all in one place and you can flip through. And then your bookmark would be very much like that shopping cart. If I chose something on different sites, it's all going to show up in one place. The other thing we just got approved. This is TEA bar up here. That's a requirement for any of our websites that we have. But right now we're working with Marcom to change this to sign up for TEA updates. And there's going to be another little link here that says subscribe. So you can actually subscribe to like little newsletters for the topic areas that you're interested in, so that when we post new resources, if there's a new training available, if there's some announcement we want to draw the users to, that we can send out emails and give updates for that. So that's Texas Sped Support. Any questions about this site? I know a lot of people that I've spoken to, because I've talked to ESCs, and they said, you know, the ESC LEA, the LEA SPED directors that the ESCs pull together, I've talked to them, and a lot of them are like, well, my teachers don't have time to go to the site and take all these trainings. And what I like to do is just tell there's other ways to use Texas Sped Support. You know, one way could be, I'm a teacher, I have several paras in my class. For our, you know, team meetings, our little unit meetings, I want to do kind of a PLC. So I'm going to share one of the resources, the online courses, and say, hey, why don't y'all review module 1, and then we'll come to our team meeting and talk about it, and do it over a length of time. You can do your independent learning. There's brief learnings like 30 minutes all the way to intensive. We have like 18-hour trainings that are broken up into, you know, like several 3-hour trainings. So, I mean, you can have any kind of professional development. Again, those tools and templates, like if I were a teacher and I knew about this stuff, before I made some progress monitoring tool, I would have gone here and see what I could download, so I didn't have to make myself and save myself time. If you need quick information, there's a state guidance tab that has our technical assistance guides, stuff like that. I did not do that. There it is. So you can go for compliance information. You have a parent asking a question. You can forward them the behavior guide or something to answer their question. You can register for events. And also the one thing that I did not show you, I cannot believe I didn't show you this. This contact tab right here, this has all of our ESC partners, and they are listed for their topic. So for instance, if I want to know who the MTSS representatives are around the state, because I have a very particular problem and I need to reach out and talk to someone. I don't need a resource, I need to talk to someone. You can find your representative in every single region. You can search by topic, you can search by region. If you don't know the region, you can view the map, and then you can find your representative in your region. So I think that's another pretty cool feature. If you haven't already, follow us on your preferred social media site. We post weekly posts about resources, about functionality. We'll probably be posting soon. We're about to roll out like a kind of a navigation video, like what is Texas Sped Support and how to navigate it. So if you haven't already, please follow along. All right. Now the special ed newsletter. Again, thank you to anyone who already subscribes to the special ed newsletter. But we have, this was actually the first job that Justin Porter gave me when I got this job early in 2020. He said, SPED newsletter is yours now. And when I first got it, it had, you know, some announcements and it had some resource highlights, but I feel that I've taken it to a different level now, and we have a lot of different sections, and it's all based on user feedback of what they want to see and what they want to hear from the SPED newsletter. Also, back in the day, it only included what our own office had for special ed updates, and I've expanded that. So I now do a call for topics across the agency for anyone who has any information that would be relatable to a special ed teacher or student, which most things are. We have announcement sections, we have upcoming date sections, we have a Did You Know? It's just a historical date and time. We just started last month a monthly spotlight on staff highlight. We have a Texas Sped Support highlight. There's department news. We shout out regions and LEAs that are doing fantastic work. We put videos there sometime. I have a national news section that I put postings from the monthly OSEP update. And then, of course, at the end, we have sped techs and job listings. So let me show you what that looks like. So you just go, I usually don't use the search feature on the TEA site because it's a little unwieldy. I just Googled TEA sped webinars and it always gets me to this page. This not only tells you what webinars are up and coming, but it has a drop down that has all the past sped newsletters in it. So if I click on January, here was the January newsletter. All of the pictures that we use are ESC partners, are from our SPED networks. When they go out and create resources and they're in the field, they take pictures and videos and get the proper TEA releases from the parents. So all of these are Texas teachers and children. And all of them are in a variety of special ed settings as well. Here are our announcement sections. This is usually like emergency stuff, like important things, like dyslexia handbook has changed, or this is up for rule comment, or here's a due date. So this is like the most important things right at the top. It's usually only one or two things. We have an upcoming date section that just gives due dates, deadlines, openings for surveys, things like that. That SSES that Kristen was talking about, we have deadline dates there. Right next to it is just the table of contents, which you can click on and get straight to the topic you want, because these have gotten quite long, these newsletters. So it's really easy just to glance at this top part and find what you need. Here is that Texas SPED support highlight, the February newsletter, which I will send out. I send these out the last Tuesday of every month, except for December. We skip December because everyone's on break. And this February, look out, we actually have a survey, a user survey for Texas SPED support. So if you navigate that site, we would like to hear from you and any updates, because we're going to be rolling into that enhancement phase just to make the user experience better. Here's the did you know? I go Google what's important dates in history and put some fun facts here. I try not to double up on that, but this is just a fun little section. Office Spotlight. I used myself for the first one last month because I didn't ask my staff yet to give me all of theirs, but this month it'll be Huck Spear, who oversees the SSES and the school family community engagement. He'll be in there this month. And then we get to the department news. Department news usually has, I mean, it could go into depth about some of the calendar dates, the upcoming dates. It could go highlight some resources. It could, like here, this Texas Autism Conference is up in the upcoming dates. This just gives you more information with a registration link. This is our, we highlight some state subscriptions we make available to Texas educators and parents. So this is our, free assistive technology state subscription with PD that we purchase for the whole state. And then there's some engagement opportunities, educator item reviews, stuff like that. Here's like a resource. So department news is just a hodgepodge from around actually the office. I should probably put office news or agency news as opposed to down here where I have national news from that OSEP letter. And then not every month, but some months I get the pleasure of having a shout out. We go to some engagement with ESCs and they brag about their LEAs and their own ESCs. This one was about extended core curriculum events. So anyway, there's that. And then at the bottom, we have a link to SPED Techs, which is your special ed resource for parents. And then any job listings. I specifically list things that are special ed job postings as well. So let me see if I had anything else. Oh, I wanted to show you all the data. Just as a fun fact, we have almost 65,000 have been delivered. We have definitely more subscribers than that, but about 65,000 are delivered. We usually have about 15,000 unique opens and almost 3,000 unique clicks. So pretty good compared to other newsletters, our click data. And then how do you sign up? If you don't know, you simply go to TA's website. Up at the very top bar, there's a sign up for updates. It's going to take you to this page where you fill in the fields with your information. And then when you get to the list of what you want to join, it's this under special populations, it's special ed updates. So that's how you sign up. And I really appreciate it. If y'all will put a plug in for these things with your colleagues, share the message, let them know this information is here. And then if you do use it, take that survey that I post at the end of February, because we'd love to hear your experience as a user on the site as well. So that's it, unless y'all have any questions for me.
Kim, could you share that deck with me and then I can email it out so everybody has access to that information?
Yes, ma'am. I remembered this morning that I forgot to do that.
Thank you very much. That'll be
Uh-huh.
really helpful.
All right. Thank you all for letting me borrow some of your time shouting out my stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. We appreciate you, Kim. Okay, thanks to Kristen and Kim, and that concludes the TEA updates, live updates. I do have some follow-ups that I'd like to go over with you from previous agenda items, and that was TEA was asked to investigate the feasibility of CAC to develop and distribute a survey soliciting topics and issues regarding special education and partnering with GCPD for developing and or distributing surveys. That we are still investigating, so we don't have a response to that yet, but it's still being looked into. And then we had a request for 18+ resources for transition, and I checked with the person in charge at TEA of that, and those are still in development. They should be out in the spring. So those are the two follow-ups I had from previous agenda items. So that concludes TEA's updates. So I will turn it back over to Amy.
Well, and now we have our guest presenter. I'd like to introduce Randy Turner to speak to us. Stephanie, do you have her slides that you can share? Or do you want-
Let me check. I emailed them out yesterday. Let me check to see. I don't have her slides per se. I have her public comment.
I can pull them up, that's fine.
Okay.
Stephanie, do I use the microphone that's over here by Amy or be in a certain spot?
Maybe we turn the microphone. I do not mind.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking the same thing. Let me go ahead and introduce myself. Thank you so much to the committee for allowing me to be here today. My name is Randy Turner, and I am the chair for the Policy and Advocacy Committee of the Texas Society of Interpreters for the Deaf. And so I'm going to use a few acronyms today, so let me throw them out there because you may not be too familiar with them. And I will do my best not to use them all the time, but in case I do, RDSPD is the Regional Day School Programs for the Deaf. GCPD is the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities, and they have already done some research I want to share with you. RID is the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, and that is our national certification entity. And then the BEI is the Board for Evaluation of Interpreters, and they are housed within HHSC's Office for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, and they're the credentialing body in the state of Texas.
Amy, I have the slides that I can share.
You got it. She's there. I can see him.
You got it? Okay, perfect.
All right. So TSID is a membership organization for sign language interpreters. We have members that are certified, non-certified, student members, as well as interpreter training programs. So briefly, we are here to promote the development and expansion of quality interpreting services for people who are deaf or hard of hearing and hearing, because it's not just the individual who has a hearing loss that needs interpreter services. We promote high standards for interpreting. We have forums for professional discussions. We provide training to help individuals upgrade their skills, and so forth. We're basically just a membership organization. And what I call the PAC, or the Policy and Advocacy Committee, is established to communicate legislative and policy issues regarding the interpreting profession to membership, and be there as a support mechanism to try to impact issues or policies that we see, need to be changed or might need to be addressed. We were the first membership organization in the U.S., even before the national organization. We were established in 1963. Next slide. So I'm here to talk about recruitment, pay, and retention of educational interpreters in K through 12. I used to have an executive director that would tell the legislature all the time, you can have the best teacher in Texas, but they're only as good as the interpreter. Without adequate skilled interpreters, Texas schools will not be able to reach students or teach students who are deaf or hard of hearing. The need for educational interpreters is higher than ever, yet the supply is not meeting the demand. Interpreters are only one piece of the puzzle that contribute to education and learning, and we understand that, but they are an important part of that process. 90 to 95% of children who are deaf are born to hearing parents, and many of those parents do not learn sign language. My brother-in-law is now almost 80, and his mother was one of those. And because he did not acquire language till he finally went to the school for the deaf at age 13, he is basically functionally illiterate today. He's smart, he's hands-on, but the system failed him back in the 50s. We didn't have special ed laws then. But interpreters are language models for these kids that don't have sign language in the home, especially. We are taking a three-pronged approach to try to help address this issue, and one is coming to you, this committee, which I'll talk about momentarily. We are watching legislative issues as they come up with Stephen Aleman at Disability Rights Texas. He's keeping us informed. And then we are hosting a panel this summer at the Texas Society of Interpreters for the Deaf Conference of regional day school programs that have made positive change in interpreter pay, recruitment, and retention in their districts, to share with members how did they do that, how did they get there, so that maybe even if it's one by one, these schools can start trying to implement some of these strategies. Next slide. This is just some brief information about reading levels of children that are deaf that graduate high school. At the fourth grade reading level or less, and 30% of those are functionally illiterate. The National Center on Special Education Research says about 1 in 5 deaf students who graduate from high school have reading skills that are below the second grade level, and about 1 in 3 deaf students who graduate from high school have reading levels between the second and fourth grade. So the quality of interpreter services has an impact on these children's learning. And currently, the districts are not, I will explain in a second, but they're not able to recruit and retain these because one reason is pay. But there are other issues why people do choose not to work in K through 12. Next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. Ask whenever you want.
What is the definition here of functionally illiterate?
I would have to look at their research to say how they define that. I did not go into that, but the link is in that PowerPoint slide. That is a hyperlink to that research. The Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities conducted a survey. I was still working there at the time in 2022. And so you've got a link to the results of that survey and their report. But the most common reasons that survey respondents chose not to work in education or left the education field was, number one, poor pay, lack of respect or support from administration or staff, classification as a paraprofessional or an aide, lack of understanding an interpreter's role by administration, few or no breaks, which led to repetitive motion injury and lead to carpal tunnel surgery, all kinds of challenges like that. In that survey, there were about 1,800 interpreters surveyed, and there are 672 people responded. Many of those were not educational interpreters. We already had data from TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards, on what K through 12 was paying. We were looking for where's the competition, because the competition is not other schools. The competition is outside of K through 12, where interpreters can earn 2 and 3 times, 4 times as much, which you'll see on the next slide. But our education code, chapter 29, requires certification of interpreters. It states that a teacher of students who are deaf or hard of hearing must either be proficient in appropriate language modes or use an interpreter certified in appropriate language modes if certification is available. And our state has a psychometrically valid certification system. As I understand, not paraprofessionals. Well, I got some data from TEA yesterday. Emily Robinson is the deaf lead at TEA. And so we talked last week and she reached out to the 53 regional day school programs and surveyed them about how many vacancies they had. And of the 53 programs, 25 replied. They have 60 vacancies for sign language certified interpreters and only 68 filled positions. So you can probably double that to figure out what a state impact is. But they have 154, quote, communication facilitators. Now, what are communication facilitators? She couldn't really tell me. It is the school's way of getting around the certification requirement. They give them a different name. Sometimes they're aides, sometimes they're communication facilitators. But if they're facilitating communication, they're interpreting. They're relaying information from one language to the other. And I'm not saying it would be easy to fill every single position with a certified interpreter, but those numbers need to be switched. There should be 154 interpreters and maybe 60 or 68 non-certified people doing gym class or PE, but even shop class. You think maybe there's not that much going on, but kids learn about math in shop class. They learn how to measure things. They learn, it might lead to a career in architecture or engineering or carpentry. So the communication in even these classes that people think are not as important may be really important in the end. Let's go to the next slide. You'll see on the next slide, the governor's committees, and I refer them often as the governor's committee. But this was in 2022. Of the 672 respondents, this is what we found. The average pay for K through 12, and I would venture to guess there was probably not more than maybe 30 people that replied in K through 12, but that average pay was $27.99. The higher ed average is $37.11. And if you work for an interpreter agency, the average is $39.40. And this is taking all levels of certification. We currently have basic, advanced, and master. The old system had 1 through 5. 5 was the highest. So those higher leveled or credentialed interpreters are going to make more. So these are the overall averages in these different fields. Video relay interpreting is $41.73. Freelance interpreting is $48.27. Medical, $49.33, and quarter legal is $72.79 an hour. The information that we got from TASB showed that there were school districts back in 2022 earning regions. And these are, in fact, I got new data just a month or two ago for 2023 from TASB. And the median pay in some districts is as low as $18.99. So that's half of the people make less than that in that region. The highest one is $30.36 in Region 4. So you're talking like Houstonish area. Region 16 was the lowest one. That was the Amarillo area. But these are median rates. These aren't even averages. And some are still that low. In 2022, we asked TASB for, and this is not to negate the importance of school bus drivers, but to be a school bus driver, it takes a lot less education and training than it does to be a sign language interpreter. You've got somebody's language in your hand, somebody else's thoughts, ideas, concepts, and if you are familiar with any kind of differences in languages, there's not always a word-for-word translation. You're interpreting meaning. And there were 4 regions, ESC regions, where school bus drivers earned more than sign language interpreters. And that's not to discredit the importance, because school bus drivers are important too. But the ability, the knowledge base it takes to convey communication is much higher than and needs a lot more education than that of some other positions that are paying more. Can we go to the next slide? So the 4 biggest challenges that we see, and I did talk to a small urban district. I'm not going to say which one, but they only have about 8 staff sign language interpreters. They are fully staffed. And the school district is only allowed to pay $18 and something an hour. The program went to the school board last year and tried to ask for an increase. And they looked at the TASB data and said, well, what we're doing is average. In that school district, there is a private or charter school that starts interpreters at $55,000. She can't compete. She can't get people to come work for her. The contract interpreter pay in that region is much higher as well. And schools go through agencies, interpreter agencies, and where they have to pay more than they're paying to have staff. And that is part of the issue as well. The statewide budget has not been provided an increase there's a typo there. The regional day school programs for the deaf since 1996. The allocation is still $33,133,200 for almost 30 years. There's not been a change, but aides get increases. Teachers get increases, librarians get increases, but our regional day school programs have not had an increase in their allocation. And one of the issues with outsourcing interpreter services to contractors is that you lose continuity of service and quality. Interpreter might change every day, if not every week. So now I don't know this child's style. And I tell you what, I would never interpret for kids because they're sloppy. They use school signs that are just made up in that school, and you get an outside person coming in, and it's very difficult to just come in and start interpreting math or science or whatever kind of course it is. They may not be able to adapt to the comprehension level of that child if it's an older child or a younger child. They get a different interpreter every day or even every week. There are concepts that might be interpreted one way by one interpreter and differently by another. So you get no consistency. So that is a real issue with using contract interpreter services. And I didn't have it on this slide, but I want to mention the biennial report that the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities publishes every biennium, just like this committee. And in that report is four recommendations related to salary, recruitment, and retention of qualified interpreters. Those recommendations include that the legislature increase the state allocation for regional day school programs for the deaf to allow districts to compete with the interpreter market for educational interpreters. The current state allocation is $33,133,200 and hasn't changed since 1995, despite the increase in expenses to run the programs and increased number of deaf students. The second one is to establish a pay rate for certified educational interpreters by rule. The region's cost of living should be considered when determining the minimum salary for certified educational interpreters. The third one is ESCs should promote the understanding of the complexity of sign language interpreting, the necessity for qualified interpreters for language acquisition, and the communication needs of students who are deaf or hard of hearing, and to school administrators. And the last one is to develop effective recruitment strategies for interpreters that best fit the local community. Could it be incentives like incentive programs, stipends, training opportunities, mentoring opportunities? I know TEA has done a mentoring opportunity this year. They're trying to find out how many of these, I believe it's 18 uncertified interpreters now have become certified after this mentoring opportunity. And yesterday when I spoke with Emily Robinson, she said that this next school year, they have 50 mentors available, which is amazing. Reimbursement for other education, visit ASL programs, American Sign Language programs. There are 13 community colleges that actually have interpreter training programs. Are the schools going to those programs to try to recruit people into their field of work? So I'd like to end with just our recommendations that we're asking this committee to include in their report is to request that TEA perform a full market study of sign language interpreter pay in Texas for schools to use as a guide for recruitment and retention of interpreters, so that they don't have to rely on just what TASB does when that is only inside K through 12, which is not the competition. And we request that TEA include in their legislative appropriations request an increase in the regional day school program for the deaf budget to be used specifically for the interpreter pay, recruitment, and retention. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Randy, this is Aaron. So interpreters are not part of the special education staff at schools. Are they considered paraprofessionals, or are they considered to be other support staff, or how does that work?
And I know Emily and I talked about this yesterday. Some interpreters are upset that they're not professionals, but when you're moved into that professional category, then because they're paid by the hour as paraprofessionals. When you move into the professional category in your salary, well, then you can't get overtime for extracurricular activities interpreting. And when Emily and I were talking yesterday, I was like, there's tons of work out there in the evenings for interpreters to tap into at the college level or community work. So anyway, but they are paraprofessionals paid by the hour. They're not considered professional staff.
Okay, because I know we're working on some recommendations around general special education pay and other compensation means for recruiting, retaining special education professionals, but this wouldn't necessarily fall under that umbrella. It would be separate and distinct from kind of those recommendations. So I just want to make sure that we got that covered. In terms,
then TE, like teachers or like librarians, then TEA could say this is the minimum. I I don't know if that's the answer or not. I don't know how much more schools need to really to compete with local interpreter agencies to be able to recruit and retain what they need. That would be a question for those programs, those regional day school programs. But
And you mentioned some other things, like, for instance, breaks during the day. So making sure they've got that adequately put in there. Are there standards, guidelines, or other resources provided to local education agencies on how to engage and how to support the interpreters in there? Or is it just kind of they're expected to know what to do?
what I have seen over the years, I used to work with or know a woman when I used to live in Dallas, which was a long time ago because I've been here 31 years. She was in the Mesquite School District. She did all AP classes and she had 6 classes back to back, high school students for an hour each with a 7-minute break between classes. She ended up with carpal tunnel in both wrists. She was a good interpreter and that's why she was in the AP classes. But if that's the only break you're getting, that's not enough. The Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf has standard practice papers. They do have one on educational interpreters. I'm not sure if it talks about the breaks, but I'd be happy to get that information to either Stephanie or to our chair here.
Yeah.
Related to kind of your story, I know that sometimes educational interpreters and interveners can be assigned to specific students, like one-on-one paraprofessionals. How does that work when breaks are needed or when a student is going from class to class and there may be different levels of interpreter needed or different specialties or just a break? How does that work?
That's a good question. I don't know because I don't work in K through 12. But I know a lot the way, since we cluster schools in Texas, there are, more than one interpreter available. So I think they do take breaks at different times so that they may rotate and have 2 or 3 people work with the same student, but not always. I know an aide, a deaf woman that is an aide in Round Rock ISD, has been for probably 25 years, and she has followed the same student all the way through their elementary periods. Now she gets downtime as an aide because they're doing work. She's not their interpreter. So that's a really good question, Amy. I'll have to.
Had a one-on-one aid for K-12. Now I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just physical, it is mental. There's a lot of research that shows in all kinds of interpreting. The mental fatigue starts at about 20, 25 minutes. So if you're and it may not be as difficult in elementary school, but when you get into the higher grades, especially, and you're interpreting biology or chemistry or trigonometry or, junior level science or AP classes, that's a lot of mental taxing, and in college classes, you won't find an interpreter probably in a class that's longer than an hour by themselves. They will have a partner and they will, every 20 minutes, 30 minutes, they will take turns. They're backing up their teammate by catching things. I interpreted once for a class at Texas State where the teacher had such a heavy accent, and because I was standing near them, the projection was going to the class. I could not understand some of what they would say because the accent was so strong. And so my partner would feed me, would throw me a sign every now and then when I would look at her like, what was that? I'm sure she saw it all over my face, like, what was that? And then I would be able to, with context, be able to interpret. But so even if there's teams, they're not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs or texting on their phone. They're working too. Any other questions from anybody online? Yes. You're muted for them.
Was double muted. How feasible is video remote interpreting in K-12 education setting? Is that something that has been tried? And are there best practices to it, or best practice not to use it? How, I know there's ups and downs with video remote interpreting. It may be an option, it may not be. I'm curious what your perspective is on that.
It may be an option. Classes, of course, when we were in COVID, everything was video and the interpreters were remoted in as well. I mean, I know there's probably some data that says all the kids in special ed kind of got behind at that time because of that, but that may be all of K through 12 too. Certain classes that you can do that with, but some, like, you can't do PE with video remote. You can't do probably any of those hands-on classes if you're taking sewing or art or those classes, because you're up and down, you're moving around. You've got different people demonstrating, showing. How's the interpreter going to know who's speaking? Unlike maybe a science or a history class where the teacher's lecturing, but then when the student needs to, or classmates are responding to questions with answers, how does the interpreter hear those responses? How is that information going to get conveyed to the class? So there's definitely some challenges with VRI, video remote.
I have a question. Do you have statistics on how many school districts actually use sign language interpreters at the moment?
It's hard to hear the questions in the room, so let me just make sure I understand. How many school districts have sign language interpreters at the moment? Was that the question? I don't know districts completely because the regional day school programs, there's 53. And some of those are multiple districts together. So it's hard to say. You also have 504 kids that might need interpreters, but nothing else. And those don't get counted in these numbers by TEA, as I understand. It's just kids in special ed. So it's hard to say exactly how many, but we know those 53 regional day school programs. I would imagine that Emily Robinson could give you those numbers at least, and how many districts that hits.
I have a quick question. I was just curious if you are familiar with any technologies that are coming around, maybe AI-based technologies that are helping, or that can help.
Not that I'm familiar with that are effective, because you're talking about interpreting meaning, not words. I understand the word run has 47 different meanings. Running a race, running for office, your hose can run, your nose can run. Those are signed 4 different ways, but they're spelled the same and they sound the same in the written context and when we speak. So how is AI going to know which run you're talking about? So I haven't seen any technology get that good yet. Maybe it's coming, but I've not seen it. I know that there is some technology out there I've seen where people can wear something, and can't remember how it works, but it's audio driven. But I just am not sure that the accuracy is there yet, especially for education. That might be it, Amy.
All right then. So, thank you for presenting.
Thank you
to us.
for allowing me to be here today.
If you have any questions.
Please
or
do.
you need an update.
Please do. And always reach out to Emily Robinson at TEA. She's a wonderful resource if you're looking for any kind of data, statistics to help you. Thank you. Turn your microphone back around. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.
I think it is time for public comment. Am I right, Stephanie?
Yes, we have 3 people. I don't know if Randy was gonna make an official public comment or that she had submitted a request to make a public comment back in December. And then Stephen Allman submitted public comment, which I emailed out to everybody. Is he with you in there today?
And Andrea submitted to me that she wanted to make public comment as well.
Right. Is Stephen with you guys in person?
Yes.
Okay.
So which one should we take first?
You should, if Randy is not gonna make a public comment, then it would go to Stephen.
Okay, then Stephen, go ahead.
Again. This is quite the fancy little tripod. I believe that I'm somewhere in the corner down here, which is not unusual for me to be put in a corner. But if you're ready for public comment, my name again is Stephen Alaman from Disability Rights Texas. And I have two public comments, one with regard to the issue of SHARS, School Health and Related Services, and also somewhat secondly, piggybacking on Randy Turner's presentation, personnel shortages in special education. I did submit written comments for you, so I'm not going to go over that verbatim. But if you have any questions about anything I said in my statement, please let me know. But I do want to get to the very last bullet on the last slide as my oral public comment to you all, which is that the SHARS issue relates to the CAC in two ways. One is that I think it is evidence once again that we need special education finance reform in Texas, and that we would ask the CAC to include in your legislative recommendation report a specific directive or request to the legislature to adopt a service intensity model. A service intensity model of funding special education would in part address the SHARS issue by making sure that state resources are available for these critical services for students with disabilities that schools in part can now no longer bill Medicaid for. And as an aside, it's also a way of addressing educational interpreters by ensuring that those students who need those extra supports can also ensure that their districts are being financially supported. So the service intensity model recommendation that was included in your report last time, I would suggest be revisited, perhaps updated to reflect these new developments in the last 2 years and be a central part of your report. A second quick recommendation is that you adopt a resolution requiring or requesting, I should say, the Commissioner of Education to appoint a specific SHARS advisory committee. I will point out that in the Texas Education Code, section 7.055, subsection B as in boy, 11, the commissioner may appoint advisory committees as necessary to advise the commissioner on carrying out duties. This would also relate to SHARS. Now, to be clear, SHARS is a program of another state agency, but of course TEA has a hand in it. And we believe that it would be necessary and appropriate for TEA at the very least to have its own advisory committee. And the commissioner has authority under, again, Texas Education Code section 7.055B11 to do so. We would ask that you pass a resolution or place an action item on your next meeting agenda to do so, and also include in your legislative report. To conclude on my second point, just to echo Randy Turner's presentation, there's a number of personnel involved in special education beyond teachers, educational diagnosticians, interpreters. Those shortages need to be addressed, and your report should address strategies to address those shortages beyond special education teachers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone have any questions? Andrea, are you ready to give your public comment?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, good morning. I'm Andrea Chevalier with the Texas Council of Administrators of Special Education, TCASE. And I echo Stephen's comments. I wanted to come before y'all today to also talk about the SHARS issue and personnel issues. As I'm sure you're aware, Texas lost years-long appeals process with the federal government. We were improperly coding our services under our school-based Medicaid program, SHARS. We were improperly coding that at the state level. So HHSC and their contractor Fairbanks were found in an audit that was released in 2017 by the federal government to not be following our own state policies and procedures. So since we lost the appeals process, HHSC and their contractor decided to recode all of fiscal year 2022, which is for services that had already been provided and funds had already been expended to provide those services to students who are eligible under the program, which is students with IEPs. And so as a result of that, we have that expected loss in expected funding of over $300 million that school districts will not be receiving now in the form of reimbursement. However, where we're at currently at the school district level is in the appeals process ourselves with HHSC. So over 700 school districts have filed appeals with the state. And part of that appeals process is submitting documentation to substantiate the things that were billed for, but then recoded as not billable. So we'll see what happens to that $300 million figure and if that ends up going down as a result of the appeals process, but we don't know when that will conclude. So that's where we're at with that. And my request to you is to have an agenda item, support the idea of an advisory committee on SHARS specifically, so that in the future we can continue discussions about how to improve the program. We can't continue going forward year to year, always filing appeals. That's just not an effective way to utilize this benefit from the federal government. So that's the SHARS request. Please include that as a future agenda item. Let's continue the conversation. And then as far as personnel goes, we're seeing the same thing that was mentioned by Randy, just like Stephen said, in all of the other professional areas that are important for special education. And what we talk a lot about at TCASE is contracted services and having to outsource evaluation staff in particular to some of these contract companies who pay their people more, they have flexible hours, and we just can't compete with that. Plus, we're a captive market where we have all of these federal laws and regulations that require us to do these things. We can't find the people to have on staff to do that. So we kind of have to pay whatever it is that they're asking for. Otherwise, we're not following the law and we're not serving kids. So I hope that in the staffing conversations that y'all have moving forward, you also kind of touch on the contracting issue as well. So, thank you.
Amy, we can turn it back over to you.
Okay. I think next we have officer elections, unless anyone has any questions for Andrea.
Amy, just real quick, actually, we're not allowed to ask questions of public comment.
We can if what they're referring to was already on the agenda. Okay. So just a reminder for officer elections, we do need to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. And in order to be eligible to run for chair, you must have been on the committee for a full calendar year. So, with that being said, Stephanie, are you going to run officer elections because I'm technically on the ballot, or would you like me to run elections?
I think you can do it, but I would make a recommendation that we take a quick 10-minute break because we've been going almost 2 hours and people may need a little bathroom break, coffee break. If everybody wants to just go off camera for 10, just say be back at 11:10.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Back at 10, and then we'll continue with officer elections. No. Okay, are we back? Agatha, are you planning to run for office today? Because if you're not, I would appreciate it if you would help me facilitate the election so that we don't have someone running it, facilitating the actual.
Yeah, in the past, when Keith was doing things, he was the one that counted the votes.
Okay, Stephanie recommended that we appoint someone. So,
I checked with Keith and that was his recommendation. If the chair wants to run again, that may be a committee member who is not running, facilitate the election. I'm happy to do it if you guys want me to do it.
Stephanie, I think that's a great idea.
What, did I do it?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. Let's get started with the office of secretary, and that is open to anyone. There's no stipulation on that. So if you would like to run for secretary, could you just put your name in chat?
Stephanie, can we get the description what each person is responsible for and the requirements?
Sure. I had emailed you guys that, but I'm happy to go over it again. I could just let me pull it up on my screen. Let me share my screen. I think it's just easier. It's in the bylaws. Everybody, you should be able to see my screen. Can you see it?
yes.
Okay, so here are the roles and responsibilities. The CAC chair shall chair all CAC meetings and facilitate meetings in a manner intended for civil decorum, shall prepare and approve all CAC agendas, shall create and appoint members to committees. The chair may create a bylaws committee to propose amendments to the bylaws as provided by Article 6, shall speak on behalf of the CAC. The vice chair shall, upon request of the chair, exercise the chair's duties in the chair's absence, shall, upon request of the chair and secretary's absence, take the minutes of the CAC meetings. In the event of the chair's resignation or inability to perform duties of the office, shall exercise the chair's duties until the next officer election. And the secretary shall take the minutes of the CAC meetings and provide minutes to TEA, shall, upon request of the chair, exercise the chair's duties in the absence of the chair and vice chair. So does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, perfect. So let's get, I'm sorry.
Of the chair is that the chair is required to be in person at these meetings as well. That's
Yeah, the chair, yeah, that was, I think, added after you guys, after COVID, right? So the chair is responsible for being physically present wherever the meeting is being conducted. So that is a requirement. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions? All right. do you guys just want to put like the procedure to do this? I know it's a little difficult doing it virtually, but you can nominate yourself by putting your name in the chat. We can take a look at that, and then everybody that approves can just approve it in the chat. Or do you have a better way? Any suggestions?
Do we want people to do it publicly in the chat, or do we want people to direct message to you when we're actually voting, and we'll do the nominating publicly? I'm just wondering.
You can direct message me, that's fine, and I can count the votes. That's fine. So we can start out with secretary. And if you would like to run for secretary, if you just put your name in chat, that way everybody can see that you want to run for secretary. Okay, so far I'm seeing nobody is interested in secretary.
Stephanie, you have been in, a member for a year, right?
No, that's only for chair, that you have
Okay.
to be a member for a year. So anybody is eligible for secretary.
I'll do secretary.
Okay, so Janie is interested in being secretary. Anybody else like to put their name up? All right, with that said, since there's only one person, I think everybody can just, if you approve, will you just give me your approval, please, on via chat? Okay, we have 9, so that's quorum. So yes, so congratulations, Janie, you are the next secretary. Thank you for volunteering to do that. We appreciate that. All right, let's do vice chair up next. Again, anybody is eligible for vice chair. If you are interested, if you could drop your name in the chat. So far, I'm not seeing anybody's name. And we're nominating people for vice chair. You can self-nominate if you're interested in running.
Okay.
Just drop your name in chat. Okay, Aaron dropped a note. If no one else would like, he can continue in that role. So if you agree Aaron should continue in the role of vice chair, would you please drop that in chat? Approve? Yes, whatever you want to write. Okay, so it looks like, Erin, congratulations, you're going to be our vice chair again. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right, next up is the position of chair. There is a requirement that you must be a member of the CAC for a full year before you're eligible for running for chair. So if you are interested in running for chair, if you could drop your name in chat. Janie wants to nominate Amy. Amy, are you interested in running for chair?
I will accept the nomination.
Okay. Anybody else want to nominate themselves? I don't see anybody else. So if you approve of Amy, would you please drop that in chat? Okay, Amy, you are going to be our chair again. So thank you so much for your willingness to serve in that capacity. So we're going to have Amy as to continue as chair, Erin to continue as vice chair, and Janie, you will be the new secretary. Thank you. And I will turn the meeting back over to you, Amy.
All right, thank you. It is good to have you on board, Janie. The next step in our agenda is our review of the bylaws concerning attendance. And I know that Stephanie has our bylaws up and ready. Stephanie, would you like to help me lead this discussion?
Sure. Let me find that section in the bylaws. Just a second. Yeah, let me share my screen with everybody. And it's in this section, section 3, and I can read this to you, but you certainly can read along with me. If a member misses more than half of the regularly scheduled meetings or misses 2 meetings in a row without prior notification to the chair, or if the chair is the member who has missed at least 1/2 of the regularly scheduled meetings, the vice chair, will report such member's absence to the office of the governor. Written notification includes notifications sent via email directly to the chair and the CAC email account. Written notification must be received by the chair and the CAC email account at least 24 hours prior to scheduled meeting date and time. When the chair and the CAC receive written notice that member or members will be absent from a meeting and such absence or absences will prevent a quorum for that meeting, the chair shall notify the CAC members that a quorum will not be present and the meeting will have to be rescheduled. So that is what is in the bylaws. And so far the process has been, Amy will send out an email asking if you're going to miss a meeting to please let her know and to let me know. And then I also send out a reminder email of the same thing a day or like 3 days before the meeting so you can let us know. As far as if you miss 2 meetings in a row and you don't notify the chair and the CAC mailbox, then I do take that person's name and I do send it to the office of the governor. And they can consider what to do with that, whether you should continue in that role, or if we're looking at reappointments, whether or not that would be somebody up for reappointment. So, Amy, do you have anything to add?
I would like to make a request that if you are an officer and you're going to miss a meeting, that you let us know ASAP so that we can get whatever tasks that you need to cover as an officer covered, so that we don't have any gaps in what we're presenting to the public as well, which is not a bylaw requirement, but it helps the committee function better.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, Amy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again because our next issue may take some writing. Yes, your question?
So that was a proposed amendment to the bylaws that we're just looking at? Or are we just covering, or we were just covering something already in the bylaws? I wasn't sure.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that no one used reporting errors happen. So our next agenda item is we're going to talk about maybe creating some meeting norms around our CAC work groups. Because I've noticed that we've been having trouble with some scheduling. So I know that in other committees that I've been a part of, sometimes work groups or subcommittees have standing dates and times that they usually meet in. So I was wondering if that might help us some. I was also thinking about the fact that our work groups are small enough that we won't have a walking quorum issue if we work over email. We also need to find out, if we come up with recurring meeting dates at specific times, how do we want our work groups to report to the full committee? Do we want people to have standing agenda spots as the leads of work groups where they can report out what they've been talking about? And what kinds of things do we want in that kind of reports? What are we looking for from our work groups as a full committee?
Amy, this is Aaron. I think in our previous report, we generally speaking had a recommendation, background, and conclusion section for each, and that was sort of the kind of the template. I think there was some variation off of that, but that's generally how they followed. I guess my question would be, for the next biennial report, do we want to follow that format? And based on that, that may be what we want the working groups to report out to the committee as a whole in terms of how they want to frame things.
I feel like in a lot of ways that format worked for us. So that may be something that we maybe would want the work groups to report out on, about, what are y'all hearing about this issue that needs to go in the background, or, you know, given the recommendations that y'all are coming up with, what do people who don't know about this issue, who might be legislators, who might be staff, need to know about this issue in order to understand your recommendation? Questions like that, or, you know, you might point out, we need the rest of the committee to send us about their own experience with this if they're not on the work group, that kind of thing. But do y'all agree with me that it might take each of the work groups to have a standing agenda spot, or y'all don't think we're there yet?
Hey, Amy, this is Agatha. When you say standing agenda spot, I mean, typically in the past, when we've had on the agenda, you know, work on the legislative report, that's
Yeah.
kind of the work groups have fallen under that agenda item. Are you wanting it to be more specific?
Or I'm just wondering if we need, I guess there's a difference between like having a standing agenda item where they work together, which doesn't really work when half of us are in the room and half of us are on Zoom, or if we just need to sort of rewrite the agenda item to be that they're going to explain what they've been doing between meetings. So I guess it's, you know, making the agenda item more specific to what we're actually doing, I guess is what I'm asking. Does that make more sense? Because I know that we've been having trouble having work group meetings within the full committee meeting. Well, having work groups scheduled before the meeting may not work for those of us that are traveling in person. So, but I see that that would be a good way to have a standing agenda spot. We could also say that the first part of the meeting, or a specific part of the meeting that would, I don't know if we'd be legally allowed to say that we would close the meeting in person and only be on Zoom for part of the meeting at the end. I know we've tried to do that, but we had a lot of crosstalk on Zoom for those of us that were trying to be in different Zoom breakout rooms in the same physical building. So we may have to I guess experiment as to if we tried to have standing meeting dates during the actual meeting time, how we do that and still make it an open meeting or not.
I think, Amy, what we would have to do is what we did last meeting is officially close the meeting and
Right.
in the meeting, and it's no longer a public meeting anymore, and then the subcommittee groups can meet.
Right. But we may have to figure out a way for those of us that had been in the same room not to cover each other in our various work group meetings.
Amy, this is Aaron. I think last time we tried to do that, and you just pointed this out, which is, I think, at least quite a few of us are on multiple working groups, and you can't be at two places at once, and we're kind of jumping around. So I wonder if doing the in between the quarterly meetings, working group meetings, where presumably we were able to schedule ourselves around that for different work groups. And then the agenda item during the quarterly meeting is just a readout from each of the working group chairs. And that way we can have a discussion as a whole committee about recommendations either that are still in development or being proposed as the final ones that they want to make. That would allow us to kind of keep moving forward without kind of running into everybody trying to be two places at once.
Aaron, this is Agatha. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, in the past, we've just had to have our subcommittees meet outside of the quarterly meetings, and then the quarterly meetings, we typically reported out recommendations, and maybe if we put some structure around a timeline of what we'd like to have due by the next meeting, and a report out, and then that way we can go through the individual work groups recommendations and comment on them as a committee and vote on what we'd like to put into the final report. I think some of what we're lacking.
Has a few comments. Oops. Sorry, Agatha.
No, that's okay. April, do you want to?
This is Aaron. I was going to note that April made a few thoughts in chat. I wonder if, April, you wanted to bring those up just so they're in the recording and whatnot.
I think that Amy might have talked to them a little bit about possibly not being able to come before. Actually, Aaron, you just said most of what I'm thinking. It's really hard to be on multiple ones, and it just seems like scheduling it. I know I think we've met once or twice, but we've never had everyone be able to meet, and everybody's lives are just so busy. So, and then just the comment around, even when we met, I don't know that I'm fairly new. And so we weren't really sure exactly like what the format of how to bring back the information should look. So I was just wondering if we all had some sort of maybe shared Google Docs or something where we could share information and things like that might make the time more purposeful.
That's what we did last year, and I can reshare what we used for last year's format, if that's helpful. Oh, thank you, Aaron. That's so helpful. Yeah, but yeah, and I can also share the Google group that had the working document that we had last year as well. I can have Stephanie send that out after the meeting. So yeah, we can help a little bit with structure issues by I think one of the things that we should maybe do. And we can pull it up, I suppose, and I can screen share and we can show you the format that we used last year to answer some of those questions. Can y'all see that?
Yes, we can see it.
So we had our table of contents. We had